I think I love gratitude. I would build on that and by adding like just now, the just this, the breath.
Mm,
Um, and that's so easy to say. But especially if you're experiencing anxiety and
mm,
it's frenzy around you, and it's really like survival. But it is what brings you back
yes,
to the sense that we are just alive and we are here now and we are
yes.
witnessing it. So to those who are really witnessing some of the worst aspects of this, possibly watching somebody die that they couldn't save, um, you know, just the threat of being on the subway to get to work and not knowing what you're catching or what you're bringing to other people you love. I would say, come back to that anchoring sense of the breath
Yes.
and that gratitude that breath is a signal I'm alive. I'm here to witness this. I'm witnessing something important. I want to have a writing retreat for healthcare workers at some point in the future because they are witnessing so many vital things. And I
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good night, and good day to you. Wherever you are at this very moment in time, thank you for tuning in to yourself first and then listening. Because when you tune in and you listen, you can be transformed. And when you listen, you realize there's some background noise. Welcome to Being You. Being You, the journey back to yourself. This is episode 34. And I am so excited. I got my friends in the house and I'm going to tell you more about them. I want to speed this up because we want to squeeze a lot into this conversation. I am Ade, your transformation agent or your transformational beingness artist, because this whole podcast is about supporting you in seeing yourself, seeing the world, seeing yourself in the world, and seeing the world in you. Just let that marinate a little bit. Just chew on that. It's about seeing yourself, really taking a look at who you are, how you're showing up in the world, what you believe. Maybe some of it's not even yours. You just believe in something because you were told to believe in that. And maybe it's not working for you, but somehow you can't let it go. So it's an opportunity for you to really get to know yourself and see yourself. And then look at this thing called the world. There's a lot of definition of what the world is. You know, you have to define that for yourself. You have to get clear. And then you want to look at how you are showing up in the world. What influence, what impact are you having on people, your family members, your friends? And then this is a deep one. I want to thank my mentor, Rev D, for bringing that to my awareness. I knew it, but it wasn't present. You want to look at how the world is showing up in you, because we are not separated. And that's what being you is about. Being you is about getting real, getting alignment, being authentic, and creating the life you want to live. And we're going to be talking about creating today. We're going to be talking about next level. I am streaming on YouTube as well. So if you see me turn my head, if you're looking on Facebook, I'm just checking, making sure everything is fine on YouTube. I have a wonderful young lady who is helping me. And today is just one of those days around technology. And so she can't really be where I fully need her, but we worked around it. But we'll get to it before next week. India, she's going to be in the chat room as well, keeping an eye out for things. And I'm ready to bring on my friends, but I want to tell you, so this Friday, I want to say this real quick, and we're going to talk more about that. This Friday, April 24th, 2020, right, at 4 p.m. Eastern, you're invited to come be with us. We're gonna talk more about that, but we are hosting a webinar. My next level: how to start a podcast. So if you've been thinking about it, or you just have this creative thing happening and you're trying to figure out, what do I do? Because we're living in interesting times. I don't want to say too much about that because that's what we're going to be talking about. But what I will do now is bring on my friends, my sisters, and I just love these two people. Let's start with Diana. Most of you know her, Diana Silver. She's a digital marketing expert. She is a podcaster. She's an author, a home chef. Her website address is mollymama.com. And those are the titles. What I know about this woman, this being, is she's a beautiful soul. She is literally, really, when people are referred to as an angel in a body, she's definitely that. I've known her now, I don't know, 4 or 5 years, seems like forever. When we just say our reunion has been 4 or 5 years, but I've definitely known her since forever. There's something about the way she communicates. As I have watched her learn something that she didn't really know to being an expert, so much so that I look at her and say, "Oh, you got to teach me how to do that." So, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, psychics and skeptics, help me welcome one of my dear friends who's joining me, Diana Silver. Hey, Diana.
Hello, Ade. Hello, everyone. It's great to be here. Thank you.
Are you muted? Is it me? Because it'd be pretty messy if I've been talking all this time and you guys couldn't even hear me. Okay.
Can you hear me now?
Now I see you talking, but I can't hear you. So it's not is your microphone muted? I'm sure you looked at that already.
No, I just.
What about your settings? Today's the day of technology. Okay, let me see something here. That's interesting. Okay, this is what I'm going to do. So technology is my friend, even when it doesn't do what I want it to do. Thank you, Carolyn, for having my back. So, Diana, how are you?
I'm doing very well. How are you?
I'm good. I feel like I want to start the intro all over again.
No, that's okay. That was a lovely intro. And thank you for having me here. And it's great to be here with everyone. So thank you.
You're very welcome. And my second guest, my friend, is Carolyn Flint. Carolyn is a story catalyst. Woo! I just feel the energy of that. She's an award-winning author, long-time journalist, and a TEDx speaker. She's also a coach for thought leaders and authors who have a bold story, who feel like they have something to say and they know that what they have to say will make a difference. And even if they're not quite sure, because she's a story catalyst, she has this unique way of helping you see yourself, see your story. And I'm talking from experience because I gave her 1 page of something and is evolving into a book. And she has a way of taking me to places that I didn't even know was possible. And sometimes I have to just say, Carolyn, hold on a minute. Let me take a breath on that one. She's truly a story catalyst. She's a catalyst for transformation. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, psychics and skeptics, physical beings and non-physical beings, because we want everybody to be here. And welcome my dear friend, Carolyn Flynn. Hey, Carolyn, how are you?
Hi. It's great to see all of you. Thank you for having me on. It's just a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, thank you for being here. Can you sort of move a little bit to? I see Diana moving on her
This
end.
Like right here.
That's great.
Okay.
Diana, I love how you moved as if that would give her room.
Okay, I gotta leave. It's mirror image, so it's like really throwing me off.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting, and
Yeah.
I feel like
Here we go.
like we're on CNN. You know,
That's right. We are so newsworthy. We're on CNN.
Oh boy! And speaking of CNN, yeah, there's a lot of stories, there's a lot of news, and I just want to check in with both of you. Let me start with Diana. So, how are you feeling today? What's bubbling up in your consciousness?
So, first of all, it's really great to be here. And like probably many others, just struggling to stay away from fear.
Mm-hmm.
With the mass media and everything going on, I think it's really hard to do that. So I'm continuing to try to, meditate and take walks and really limit how much news I see, and then
Mhm.
I'm really just reading just junk, just junk novels, garbage, complete garbage, complete fun.
Mhm.
So I'm really taking this approach of just what makes me happy, and I've been also cooking a lot of food with butter, and that's really helpful.
A lot of food with butter, and that's helpful. How is that helpful?
Because it tastes so good. It's butter. It's butter.
If in doubt, eat, right? Yes. And Carolyn, what about you? How are you doing? What's bubbling up in your consciousness?
I guess the main thing that's bubbling up is that this is a time when we can really be contributors in the world, and I'm
Mm,
really asking myself those questions.
mm,
Um, but it's a hard time to think about being a contributor because the world's on fire around us. So I'm very lucky. I just came out of this. Just before this, I've been
mm,
doing a 2-hour webinar on ritual and how to bring in rituals.
mm,
And
mm,
one thing that's really anchoring me is to really kind of nest into my home.
mm.
So a lot of cooking, like Diana, not so much butter. Although, yeah,
Oh,
we're
you're
doing
missing
plenty of
out.
butter. We're doing plenty of butter. We did chili rellenos last night, so that was like
Mhm.
really cool. Um, and we're planting a vegetable garden. So I feel like in a way I'm re-nesting. I'm getting reacquainted with my home, which
Mm,
is more than just these walls. It's really just my own sense of where I belong in the world
mm,
and my own sense then of purpose. And there's
mm,
something about coming back to what's familiar but seeing it with new eyes that's bringing me to those questions right now.
mm.
The only thing I really have an answer to is that it's time to contribute, and I'm just asking the question about how that will look.
Yeah, yeah. And there's, excuse me, there's so much in what you've said there that I always feel like I want to unpack this whole thing about nesting in your own home. And, it's like creating a new place of belonging. Can you say more about that? Because in order to,
Mm.
to make the difference, to want to give of ourselves, we still also have to nurture a part of ourselves to be ready to show up for the world. So can you talk more about that?
Yeah, I think it's what I'm experiencing is that I'm noticing the absence of the frenzy that I
Mm,
had, where it was almost like when I was out in the world, I was trying to escape myself, my real self.
mm,
And what I'm really coming back to is just a much truer, much more authentic version of myself and my family.
mm,
I'm
mm,
in an interesting position because I have twins who are college age, but because of the circumstances, they're coming back in. One's been with me since March 18th. The other one is
mm,
going to be trekking across the country
mm,
and arriving in early May. But it's giving, those are fresh eyes too.
mm,
So I think it's really just about noticing all the ways that I had been distracting myself from even
mm,
seeing who I was and
mm,
what our family was.
mm, mm. That requires taking a deep breath on that one. So, Diana, what about you? This whole thing about coming back to self and nurturing, and as you eat food with a lot of butter and staying away from the news, and because I know that's not the only thing you're doing. How have you been sort of nurturing that inner self and coming back to yourself?
So it's similar to Carolyn. How can I contribute? How can I
Mm,
make a difference right now? And
mm,
at really, and at the beginning, when it first started unfolding, I'm like, I've been working remotely for years. So I
mm,
made like 6 little videos really fast and I got them up because I was just like, what can I do? What can I do? What can I do? And I think right now I've calmed down a little bit and looking at more meaningful ways that I can contribute.
mm,
And it's this idea of, what can I do today? How can
mm,
I be the best version of Diana today and
mm,
serve whoever shows up? And um, I've been doing a lot of things for my neighbors, and that's been really helpful. And
mhm,
I've instituted Sunday dinners, and I'm
mhm,
cooking on Sunday. I almost cook all day on Sundays, and then I deliver food to a couple of people in the neighborhood that I know, appreciate it, need it, whatever.
mm,
So
mm,
that's a very small thing that I'm doing, but it is this idea of how can I contribute? How can I be the best version of myself? And what's been really surprising to me is just I have so many ideas. Like it's like an overdrive, and I mean, it's just like, okay, wait, you know. But I think there is something about this time that when Carolyn was talking about returning to herself, and it's almost like you're pausing and listening to yourself, at least for me, that there's a lot of creativity. And
Yes.
for me, much of my life has been about quieting my creativity and, trying to be a business person. And so right now, it's just that creativity is just, going crazy.
Yeah. Creativity is on steroids. But isn't that what happens? It's like, because I know when I go on my silent retreats, and I go sometimes 3 days, sometimes 5 days, where I've only done it 5 days once, but 3 days I've done it quite regularly. One of the things that I notice is I start getting all new ideas. I start seeing things from a different perspective. And when I come back, I feel recharged. And, I call this the theme, the topic for today is a global upleveling. And I feel like we're not only, it's not just an invitation. Some of us have been invited to up level, to step into our next level. Some people are being dragged into the next level because that's just the way it is. And I think this, for me, I look at this, what's going on right now, as an opportunity for us to come back to ourselves. It may be stressful, it may be hard, it may be difficult or not. But when we come back to ourselves, as you both have been saying, we just start to notice some things about ourselves that we've been too busy to pay attention to. I often say, slow down and catch up with your blessings. We've been conditioned to run, to do this, to do that. But when we slow down, we catch up with what we already have, that already exists, right? And anyone can feel to jump in. I don't have to keep coming to you because your name is there. They know. So yeah, I do appreciate how we're starting this. Let's talk about, because you both have talked about this urge to do more and create, and we're working on a project that we're going to be talking about. And you've sort of spoken to this, but maybe you can elaborate a little bit more. What was it like before COVID-19 when you're working with people? What was your daily life like? What was it like with your clients, with your friends? And what is it like now? What has changed? What has been the main, maybe a couple of things that have been more impactful? I'll go to Carolyn.
Yeah, I'm seeing in a lot of my clients, they're writing books, obviously. So, and I'm seeing a lot of them just sort of a deepening sense of purpose. That they're getting much more clarity on why they're writing, what they're writing, and why the world needs it. Of course, it's my job to kind of guide them through that, through some of the anxiety of like, but it's a scary world, It's a scary world. But I think there's just sort of what I see emerging is just a much more of a sense of a much more natural desire to care for the earth and for each other in better ways. And I think that kind of one way to do that is to kind of create these nourishing conversations where
Yes.
we are right now. I think the whole planet is trying to find ways to deepen social connections without all the usual ways that we do it. And we're being pretty creative about it. And it's
Yes.
really kind of nice to see that
Yeah.
unfold.
Yes, it is really powerful. I don't know if I've mentioned it to you both, but I feel like we're in a place and a time where I say this is showtime. There's no need to rehearse. There's no auditioning. This is get on stage, know your lines, and if you don't, make it up. That is creativity. Showtime.
I believe that we're ready. I think
Yes.
many of us have been preparing for that, and maybe we didn't even know we were. But we've been preparing out of just where our desires have been
Yes.
leading us.
Yes.
And now the moment is here.
Yeah. Diana?
So I have, before COVID, I would say that I was in this rush zone of off to the next call, off to the next chat, off to the next this, and now I feel like when I interact with other people, I'm much more present and much more like, I want to let them know that I'm concerned about them. I want them to be well. And like I say that, I'm trying to say that as much as I can everywhere. It's really true. Like that's my intention. And so I think I'm showing up very differently as far as how present I am with people. And then the other thing that a lot of my meditation, call it prayer, was really centered on, honestly, very selfishly, myself. Like, okay, what all these, Diana, things that I want to accomplish in my life, or concerns and worries and things that I have, prayers. But since this happened, I'm really focused on just the planet and everybody in it. And part of my daily ritual and meditation is seeing my own light of my own being surround our planet. Enrich it well and infuse it with light and wellness and health.
Yes.
And so I just have this much broader awareness of showing up for everyone, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. It makes a lot of sense. Earlier, you talked about what you're doing for your neighbors and said that's a little thing you're doing, but those things are very impactful because connection is important. Connecting with somebody else, seeing, especially when we're being encouraged to socially distant, which means it's really just more about physical distancing. And the interesting thing about that too is it seems like we're more connected now that they're telling us to be physically distant from one another. And connection, humanity, we're wired for connection. We not only thrive on it, it's how we grow. Without connection, we shrivel and die because we need each other. And I believe that this moment has kind of woken that up in us, where we can see the importance of checking on one another. And as we meditate, and not just, for me, I won't even say, okay, maybe what you were doing before was not the right way to do it, but you were doing it the way you were doing it before. And now this is the next phase to extend it further. And I think there's a sort of energetically, there's an expansive energy. Now, what I want to ask is, there are some people, I know a lot of people who are telling me, oh, I'm starting to write poetry, I'm writing songs, books are just coming. And it's almost like people just wake up and suddenly creativity is just coming out of nowhere. Like we're tapped into this pump of creativity just flowing. I know family members who are doing things that they've always wanted to do for many years, 5 years, maybe even longer, but it's just gushing through literally. And I also want to be aware or acknowledge the fact that, yes, there are probably some people who are not experiencing that. And they may not be experiencing it because maybe they have a family member who's sick. Maybe they had a family member who died. Maybe they're worried about what they're going to eat, or financially, or they still have to go to work while they're talking about, we haven't found a cure for this. What would y'all say to people who are in a place where they're concerned? And really what I'm saying is words of wisdom, if you will, because the whole thing about connecting, we need each other. So what would you share with them to maybe support them as they navigate and do the extraordinary work of being a nurse, a doctor, a mailman, mailwoman, or whatever? What words of wisdom would you share with them, Diana?
I would say just find something to be grateful for every single day, no matter how small that is. Because Ade and Carolyn, as you know, I've had a very serious health challenge in the last year. And that's kind of what brought me back to good health was, for me, it was just, hey, I got to wake up today. So I think, finding something, and there's a lot of stuff out there about gratitude practices and how important that is, but I really do believe that it does shift you. And even right now, when there are so many horrible things happening, for me, it is like that getting up, it is that hearing the birds again. And so I think that if we can do that, just a small, and it doesn't need, I'm making my list of 100 things I'm grateful for. Do one. Just do one. Just focus on one every day.
Yes, gratitude is energizing. It literally shifts your energy and how you see the world. Carolyn?
I think I would love gratitude. I would build on that, and by adding
Mm,
like just now, the just this, the breath.
mm,
Um, and that's so easy to say. But especially if you're experiencing anxiety and
mm,
it's frenzy around you, and it's really
mm.
like survival. But it is what brings you back
Yes.
to the sense that we are just alive and we are
Mm,
here now and we are
yes.
witnessing it. So to those who are really witnessing some of the worst aspects of this, possibly
Mm,
watching somebody die that they couldn't
mm,
save, um, you know, just the threat of being on the subway to get to work and not
mhm,
knowing what you're
mhm.
catching or what you're bringing to other people you love. I would
Yes.
say, come back to that anchoring sense of the breath
Yes.
and that gratitude that that breath is a signal I'm alive. I'm here to
Mhm,
witness this. I'm
mhm,
witnessing something important.
mhm,
I want to have a writing retreat for healthcare workers at some
mhm.
point in the future because they are witnessing so many
Yes.
vital things. And I
Yes.
think also I would say to people in those situations that there's a worldwide gathering sense of gratitude for them that is
Mhm,
happening
mhm.
now. It's like tangible.
Yes.
It's like they're not unseen the way that they were
Mhm,
before. Um, and I see that the wisdom industry is not going up there out into the ivory tower place, but coming right down to where people are.
yes.
And
Yes.
there's just this wonderful growing kind of collective thing happening where many, many more people are tuning into some of those practices like
Mhm,
gratitude, the breath, meditation, and really, I think probably the quality of our attention to each
mhm,
other
mhm,
has
mhm.
increased. And that's one thing to be grateful for and to be noticing and to just let yourself feel what you're feeling right now.
Yes. Yes. Ooh, let yourself feel what you feel. That's so true. It's like coming back to this moment. And we talked earlier about rushing, running, and trying to catch up with some things, but the gift of this moment. And I would even go as far as whatever you're dealing with is this global up leveling is helping us remember
Yeah.
and remind us of the power, the importance of being here now, just this moment, taking a deep breath, um,
Yeah.
and our connection. Yeah. So
Yeah.
you guys have been bubbling with creativity and the things that like I'm like, okay, this I want to go there, but it's like because I'm an Aries. I just like to I see possibilities. I always see silver lining. I'm always like, yeah, and I also understand that in every given moment, whether we are in a COVID-19 season or not, there are people suffering and in pain, and there are people succeeding and doing well. It's just part of life. We have death, and there are babies being birthed side by side. And I think that's a great thing about this. And even that is part of the creativity, because creativity is about a dying of an idea and a birthing of a new idea.
Hmm.
So, Diana, you were going to say something?
Yeah.
Okay. So let's talk about what we're working on and why it's actually important and why we're doing what we're doing.
Yeah.
And this idea of storytelling and you being a story catalyst. So I'll start with you, Carolyn. And a lot of people have stuff they're trying to get out now. So let's just talk about that. I just throw it to you without actually a specific question.
Okay. Well, I think it's the story is maybe what I'll latch on to there is like the story that you want to tell.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that, I mean, people come to me and they want to write a book because they want to be talking to more people than they're talking to now. They're
Mm-hmm.
enjoying the conversation that they're having, and it's very nourishing, and they want to bring that out to others. And that's why we're going to do a webinar on how to do a podcast, because that is another way of bringing out that conversation and in a nice interactive way where you're creating community around
Mm-hmm.
it. And there's something that starts to there's some kind of collective fortification that happens when you
Yes.
start bringing people together around nourishing conversations like that. And if you haven't decided where you're going to put this energy, this creative energy yet, then there are a lot of ways to start exploring it, whether you do like a podcast first or a book first or a YouTube channel first or however you do it. But there's something that's actually going to inform you and fortify you along the way just by taking that first step and starting to have those conversations to more people in a wider circle than you were having them before. Because your circle will hold you and it will tell you about the next horizon.
Indeed. And stories are important because it's what connects us. I say life is nothing but a conversation, and the loudest story gets the attention until it doesn't. Anyway, Diana, so stories or wherever you want to go with that, what are your thoughts?
So, along with Carolyn, I'm super excited to be participating in Friday's event to how to start a podcast. And honestly, I wished I would have had us when I started. So for those of you listening, don't know, I kind of fell into having a radio show, and Ade has been my producer for 4 years. And then that morphed into a podcast, and now it's a video podcast. And oh my goodness, all the mistakes I've made and all the stuff I didn't know. So I'm really excited to be able to share with anybody that's listening and thinking about doing a podcast and moving forward and having an opportunity to share their voice, their stories, and their mission. And my two counterparts on this call are so incredibly talented and know so much. So I just wish, like I said, I could have gone. So it would have helped me.
So let's stay with that for a minute. And as you both been saying, there are many ways to get stories out. Carolyn was talking about writing a book, a podcast. There's just many ways. A blog, going out on the street. It's Facebook. Well, you can't go too far out. You can be in front of your house, tell a story outside. Instagram Live. We see a lot of that nowadays. Facebook Live. There's many ways. But the thing is, what I want to ask, because it's and I think some people may be asking this question. It's like, I don't know. So why a podcast? What is it about a podcast, that makes it so powerful? And then I'm going to go to Diana. I see her face light up when I asked that question. She was like, "Ooh, yes, you look like I just served you something with a lot of butter in it."
Well, there's something very powerful about listening to somebody's voice. And having that opportunity to have that conversation with people and to share and then build community around that. And when I think about just the last 4 years and all the people that I have interviewed, oh my gosh, so many of them are now friends of mine, and the messages that I've received to listeners about helping them recreate this recipe that their family had lost, or they too had been thinking about starting a business but were afraid. But my guests talked about some stuff. So it's that impact, that's engagement, and that just it's a personal thing to chat with people on a podcast. And for me also, it's really helped me to understand what my brand is. Because I think when I started Mole Mama, I thought it was one thing and it's completely morphed into something else. And I think the way that I've gotten so clear about it is because I talk about it every week. And there's something about that when you yourself are talking about something that you're passionate about, how it just morphs and evolves, and it's kind of its own living thing, and you're giving it that space to evolve and to grow, and it's quite magical. And I had zero experience. So if anybody listening going, "Oh, I can't do that, I've never done public speaking," no, I had zero experience. I had some public speaking at work, and other than that, I don't know how many of you are old enough to remember this, but we used to play with, I grew up on a dairy farm. We had old tin cans, and you put the string on each one, and then you talk through it. That was my experience.
that was a real podcast.
So for anybody, if you have a story, if you have a message, if you have something that you're passionate about, the rest of it will figure itself out. I think what you need to get really clear on is, what is your passion? And what is that story that you want to share, like Carolyn was talking about earlier?
And I want to stay with you, Diana. So when you think of the new days at the beginning when you were doing radio shows and where you were then, tell us about where you were then and where you are now, as well as what kept you moving forward. See, I know the story, so I'm just gonna pretend I don't.
So when I first started, my very first show, my husband was literally sitting across the table, because that's where I recorded did my live show, and with little signs, he's holding up, smile, say this, say that, and then I had you in my ear helping me along. And then I literally for 6 months, I cried. I would cry a month before every show because I was so scared of doing that. And I've had guests that we've run out of questions. We've had technical issues. We have had no power in the house. I had to do it on my phone. I mean, it's like so many different things have happened. And, I've been really fortunate because I had a day in my ear going, try this, try that. So that's been a huge help. But that's where I started. And also because my format is I love to have guests and entrepreneurs and artisans I talk to. And when I started, almost everybody said, no, who are you? Who's Molly Mom? Like, yeah, whatever, no. And now I've gotten to a space where, that I have more people saying yes to me than saying no. And a few months ago, I was invited to a local comedy club in San Diego, and I got to do my first interview in a green room. And that was kind of cool. And I'm going to be doing, if we were back together again, I have another one for a really kind of famous comedian that I'm going to be interviewing in September. So I've gone from nobody wanting to talk to me at all to, now it's gotten easier. And I think the thing that was just in the last probably 6 months, it became really clear for me is that a large part of my brand is this connection that I had with my mother and cooking with my mom. And when she died, I lost that. I lost that conversation that I got to have with her pretty much every day about what are you eating, what are you cooking, what did I need, what ingredient do I need? And now with my guests and with my show, I have that again, but with others. So it's really interesting how it kind of replaced. It can never replace a relationship I had with my mother, but it's replacing some of those conversations and continuing conversations. Right. So it's been rather remarkable. And I really, for anybody that's listening, if you are hearing, maybe I should have a podcast, you should have a podcast. You should. I mean, if it's even a slight idea, you need to look at that and give yourself permission. Yeah. And if not now, then when? And there's never a better time than now.
I love that you said that. One of the things I want to say, because I don't think I've actually thought about this until you were talking about those moments during your show at the first two shows when you ran out of questions. And without you telling me, I just knew you ran out of questions. But the thing is, I mean, I've been doing radio for over 20 years now. And I tell people, I say, I listen for a living. So I can feel what's going on. I listen with my eyes, with my ears, with my body. And it was so, I mean, I didn't think about it then, but being able to give you a direction to move to, or maybe suggest questions and why did you ask this? Why did you ask that? It gave me so much joy. I felt so good to be able to offer that support. And the reason I'm bringing that up is sometimes we feel like we don't have everything we need, or am I going to run out of something to say? there's always something that's going to support you on whatever your journey, your vision is. Whatever you're trying to do, there's always somebody there, a resource that's going to support you. And on top of that, to use my experience, people who will support you on your journey when you feel like, oh, I don't know what to do, it gives them so much joy to assist. So it's like in your, not you, Diana, but in you, universal you, in your youth, like, oh, I don't know what to do now. Something will show up. And if it's a person, it's just like, oh my God, I'm so happy. And that's connection.
Mhm.
That's connection. And it's a gift. So even when we don't know, somebody knows. So, I'm just people who might be feeling like I don't have what it takes to do this, to start a podcast, to write a book, to start a new way of working or whatever, start a business, whatever it is. It's always help, and there's always going to be somebody willing to step in there. Let me come over to Carolyn. And the question is, I know, right? The question, what was the question? The question is,
What was the question?
podcast. Why now? Why podcast? Why podcasting?
Why now?
Why now? Yes.
Yeah, I'm going to go to poetry to answer that question.
Okay.
I like I said, I'd just been in another webinar right before this, and it was the poet Michal O'Sullivan, who's a Irish poet, and he gave me this line that I'll share, which is talking about, those of you who want to contribute, who want to help, who in a way is kind of a ministry of just like whatever is coming from your heart that you need to give to the world that only you can give. And this line just really stuck with me, which is to think they do this for love and love's time have come.
Mhm.
That's my answer. To think they do this for love and love's time have come. I think we've been waiting for a long time for love's time to come.
Yes.
And I think that
Yes.
there are many people who are ready, and they've been telling this story in little bits and ways all along. But now it's time to bring that to a bigger conversation. I think the nice thing that I experience with podcasts is kind of like I'm going to give you kind of the journalist answer. So I'm moving from poetry to journalism,
Mm-hmm.
which don't seem like they belong in the same conversation. But I'm a longtime journalist, magazine editor, and there was something that, as being a conversation creator, that I really loved about that, like bringing different panels of people from wildly different walks of life who hadn't even been talking to each other. And then to watch those conversations solve some of our most complex problems in our community, it was awesome. Yeah. And that's the journalistic realm, but I think there's sort of the social, personal, spiritual, mind, body, spirit world where those conversations that already have been happening just need to come together at this new moment to
Yes.
happen.
Yes. I've always, when Ambassador and I created or birthed Life Conversations, it was a similar conversation that we were having, and I remember we joke about. I say I came up with it. She says she does, but what I remember is me saying life is nothing but a conversation. And it shows up in different ways. It may show up through a book, through a radio show, a podcast. It may show up in as a nurse, because even when you think of people say, well, I'm not having a conversation, I'm just treating people. We remember those caregivers whose words and how they interact with us, the words they choose to express, how it touches us at such a deeper level. I think really that's if you think of all other what am I trying to say? Beings in the world. That's the unique thing that we have. We can speak out loud. Not to say animals can communicate, because they certainly do, but we communicate energetically, vibrationally, as well as verbally. Is that? Yeah, I'll go with that. And it makes a difference to hear somebody say to you, like just the poem that you just read, or somebody say something to you. It's like, I really believe in what you're doing. Oh, I'm really grateful for you acknowledge me this morning. Oh, thank you for checking on me to making sure I'm fine. Yeah, I'm okay. I'm grateful that the world is acknowledging, the nurses and the doctors or key workers.
Hmm.
It's something, and we even say, well, it's not what you said, it's how you said it.
Right.
So, but I think there is a tendency to take that for granted, and we know stories of, metaphorically speaking, the grandmothers, stories of the grandmothers, which is like, for me, I see it's like weaving a web and connecting the grandchildren with their parents and with the grandmothers and those who came before. And it's a we're in a great time, as you said, we're in a great time, and the world is ready for it right now.
Can
So,
I
sure.
can I bring it story down to its
Mhm.
simplest level though? Because I've said
Mhm.
many lofty things. Um, I think it comes down to just pure curiosity and tenderness
Mm.
about another human's experience. All
Yes.
story is about the human experience, and the question I think behind all of it is, what is it like for you to be you?
Mm. Yes. Being you. Yes.
Yeah, but the idea that somebody would give you their attention and be curious and tender about wanting
Yes.
to know what it is like for you, there's something
Mhm.
very powerful about that. And there's something very, very powerful about sharing those stories with
Yes.
others.
And you get to find yourself in this world. Um, there's a story that Diana shares about, doing radio even when she didn't know how. She just had a yes. She had a yes. That's a powerful thing. She just,
Yeah,
like, I don't even know. I don't remember why you even said you were going to do it, but there was a yes in you, and your yes brought you the support, your husband and friends like Melissa, and encouraging you. But there is something else that you've learned on your process of this, having a radio show and then moving to a podcast. I don't want to say it, I just want to throw it to you because I know it. I know everything. You want to share that, or you want to?
Yeah, I think what you're referring to is just like how much it's allowed me to grow.
Mm-hmm.
Like it put me on a trajectory of personal growth
Mm.
that I feel like there's no other education that I have done in my life
Mm.
that has just propelled me to grow. And and not only have I grown and like I kind of understand now how to do a podcast and how to interview people, it has really helped me in how I listen to people.
Mm.
I was definitely one of those people that was not a good listener,
Mm.
and I listened so that I could speak. And I think that this has really helped me to really listen. And then I think the other thing is that I get to learn from amazing people. Like it's giving me access to people and to people's stories that there was a few weeks ago, I interviewed this guest who she has cancer and she's cooking to help her cope with her cancer. And she actually, I was interviewing her, we were not on camera. She was in her bed and had not taken her pain meds because she wanted to be coherent for our interview. And there were so many times throughout our 30-minute interview that I had tears running down my face.
Mm.
So it's a gift in that I've grown, and then it's just the connections that I'm making with other remarkable people and stories, and it's just amazing. So is that what you were asking me about?
Yeah, it is. We're right there. Stories help us find our voices, doesn't it? It's like, when we start speaking our own story, our own life experience, it strengthens our who we are. It strengthens our voice. We see ourselves differently. That what I'm saying is going on in the world. Sometimes some people will disagree, and sometimes some people would agree. But the courage to release your own story, your own point of view, it's a soul thing.
Mhm.
And as well, yeah, if you have a business, which we're going to be talking about that too, it's another way to move to bring your soul energy into your business,
Yeah.
because it's not separate, right?
Yeah, and I wanted to just really quickly acknowledge Miss Carolyn, because Miss Carolyn's my book editor and amazing human, and so she's really helped me. We talked about when you introduced her that she's a story catalyst, and I think the fact that she's helping and participating in this podcast webinar I think that's one of the critical pieces as you get started and as you go is what is that story that you want to focus on?
Yes.
Because she really helped me, go from probably 50 different things to, it's really about the relationship between your mom and you. Get really focused on that. So I think for anybody that comes to this webinar, it's really great to have access to Carolyn. So.
That's it. We're the supporting agents or actors.
Yeah. I was going to start giving the love to Diana though, because
okay, go ahead, give the love to
Diana. Because since I've known her, I knew that she had a sacred yes in her, and I have watched this whole process where she has her joy for it being in pursuit of her sacred yes has just been infectious. So you've really inspired me because you followed it and you've created this and it's manifested in all these ways that you probably couldn't have anticipated it when you began and were scary, but you threw yourself into it and you learned it. So in a lot of ways, I just bow.
Yes. And I want to jump on that in a sense that it's bringing me to a conversation we had recently where, first of all, what I want to say is all of us are creative. We are all storytellers. We just have to decide how we want to tell the story. Sometimes some people can tell the story in silence. They just know how to just hold a space and listen. Even that's a storytelling, because we all know what it's like when we're dealing with something or we need someone to really hear us and they listen and they're not trying to correct. They're not trying to say, oh, don't do that. Oh, don't think that thought. They just listen. And they can say maybe one word or just a sentence like, I can feel that this is really challenging for you or really hard for you. And I've had people like that in my life. And something about somebody recognizing what I'm feeling just breaks me down into tears. It's like, oh my God, you get it. I thought I was crazy. And I think it's important for people to know that. So we are doing this workshop. What I was going to say is this, when we follow this creative energy, it leads us to places that we didn't even have planned for. Now, we started this conversation sort of like individually last year, and we came together now, working together and setting up this podcast that the webinar that we're doing on February Friday. But it was very organic, and the skills that you bring, Diana, that you bring, Carolyn and myself, of working in radio. I mean, I've always loved radio. I'm a communicator. Sometimes I got to learn to okay, enough. But I can do a radio show for 24 hours. Just give me some water, give me some interesting content to talk about. I'll do it. And so our coming together, our individual sacred yes, has now brought us to a place where we can support others while they're sort of like that baby stage. And there's some people, I know there's some people who are listening who've actually registered or going to be registering. Why should they take this webinar? Let's just keep it simple. Let me go to Carolyn. Why should they take this webinar?
Oh, it's going to cut down your learning curve by years. Because there's so many things to get your arms around. And what I really love about it is that each of the three of us have these pieces that combine in these great synergies that are just going to be so enriching. And one of the things we want to do is after the webinar, you can get a 60-minute consultation with one or all three of us just to really shore it up, put it into practice. So you've got somebody who's going to basically do the courage walk with you. And you'll have the tools basically it's going to fall into the category of 10 things I wish I knew before I began. You're going to know them.
Yeah, you can find out what I learned on the job and not to do. Never ever do that again. And I'm still learning. Sometimes it's like, oh, that's something I need to take care of. Diana?
Yeah, if I can just echo what Carolyn has said already, and what I said earlier about, I wish I would have had this class when we got started, or just a webinar like this. But I think that in all seriousness, we're going to be talking about branding, as well as how just real functional tools that you can use to, put together your show descriptions, and how do you do outreach to guests and schedule guests and all that kind of stuff, as well as talking about some of the best equipment out there to use, and sound. And so I think with the combination of the three of us, as Carolyn mentioned, there's so much diversity and the experience that we bring, and hopefully it will really cut down the just amount of time you're going to spend trying to decide, how do I do this, so that you can actually get to it. So you can just start it and go. So I think that's the real unique value proposition that we bring to this, is this really cutting down the time it's going to take you to figure out some of the nuts and bolts and just get going.
You talked about branding, Diana, and I don't think we kind of focused. I don't think we focused a lot of time on the fact that you're a digital marketing expert, and I've learned so much from you. You're like, no, Ade, that font doesn't work. This is what we do. Like, what you need. I'm like, oh, I never thought about that. I just like a font that looks cute. You're like, no. And tell us about your experience as a digital marketing expert, because that's important, especially when we're talking about branding. This is open for people who just feel like, I have a story to tell it, maybe about their grandparent or their family or the love of food. And it's also available to open to people who have a business, who they've been forced to be at home now, and they have one another way of reaching out. So tell us a little bit more about your digital marketing experience.
Yeah, so I just want to also call out Carolyn, because Carolyn has amazing branding experience. She's an editor for online magazine, a real magazine. I don't know. She's all kinds of stuff. But my area of branding is more around the digital space and what you do online, and just consistency with your imagery, with your message that you're getting out, the simplicity around it. And I've worked in Silicon Valley for over 20 years for some really big consumer brands. And so I have a deep background in this area. So, yeah. But it's all about that consistent messaging for your consumer, your listeners, and just really making sure that you get clear on what that consistent message, imagery, sound, that it's just owning your hand.
Hello, Tiffany. Thank you for joining us. So I'm going to read just the pointers. And I also want to ask Carolyn, because there are some people who are going to listen to this later or just listen to the audio, and I forgot to create like a short link for those who listen to the audio. But how do people get to the link on your website, Carolyn?
We have put the link here in the chat.
Yes.
And it's MailChimp with an I between I and P / Carolyn Flynn / my next level.
Okay. So let me just look at it again, even though I posted it, because there are people who will be listening to it on the audio and be like, well, but how do I get to it? So it is MailChimp, but you don't spell it. So let me just spell it out anyway.
Yeah,
MailChi.MP /Carolyn Flynn FLYNN / my next level. Okay. And some of the things you're going to experience that you're going to get from us is basically the pointers. Let me just read it. I don't want to read through the whole thing. You can go to the website and read it, but how to brand yourself, creating your programming, build your interview list, get your gear in gear, and fill the room, so to speak. There's a lot more on the website. Check it out. Now, I'm kind of dancing through a lot of things, but I want to throw it back to both of you. Carolyn, is there anything else that we need to mention that I haven't talked about, or Even if you think later on after the thing that you would say, he should have asked that or should have said that, feel free to do that now. And I'll come to you, Diana. Go to Carolyn first.
I'll just add a little bit more toward branding. It's basically the art of standing apart from others, and really, basically, like it's a focusing thing. It's like, how do you position yourself so that you have the most captivating story, so that people just can't resist what you're offering. So there's that, and then I would just say it's time. It's time.
Yes.
We want these voices. We want to hear these stories. It's time to tell these stories and have these conversations.
It's time. Diana?
I love that. I don't want to go after Carolyn.
Well, it's time for you to go after her. It's time. Sorry.
It's time. In all seriousness, I mean, that's so beautiful and so right on, because it is time. The world needs you.
The world needs you.
The world absolutely needs your voice.
Indeed.
And I'll just add, if you haven't noticed, we laugh a lot. So we're a lot of fun to be around. But I credit Ade and Diana for that. You guys always make me laugh.
It's all the ingredients come together. You're like, what is that? It's just a combination of a lot of good stuff.
Yeah.
And as we get ready to release this conversation, this whole thing about it being time, one thing that I would want people, whoever is listening to and really think, I don't know, I'll just see maybe later on. And not even convincing, but just something that could shift in how we're looking at what the world, this global up-leveling that we're going through and growing through is, some of us are wondering what's going to happen in the future. How long is this going to happen? And are we going to go back to how it used to be? First of all, there is no back to go back to. We can't go back. Nothing goes back anyway. Nature never goes back. Life never goes back. But what we're experiencing now, we can't go back. So what I would say is, if you are thinking about what the future is going to look like, the answer is you. We create the future now. There is no future that we're moving into. What we experience in the future is what we're creating right now. The time is now. You have a story. If it's not podcasting, find a way to release that story. Find a way to step on stage and do your thing, because the world needs you. And yes, for some people, it's hard times. But if you have something to give, this is the time to do it. This is the time to be joyful. This is the time to move. This is the time to dance if you can. Because if you say, well, too many people being sad, I can't be joyful. Well, you can't get sad enough to help them feel better. But you can inspire them by your joy, by your movement, by your stories, by things that are happening. So if you're wondering what the future looks like, well, it's up to you. You get to create it. And like what Carolyn said, it is time. And it is time to wrap up this conversation. Ladies and gentlemen, New Jace, thank you for being here. India, thank you. There's some other people in the chat room. Thank you all for listening. Diana, Carolyn, I just love working with you both. And I am so, so grateful for knowing you, for meeting you, and for this baby that we give birth to, because it's literally helped me step into my next level. And not only that, it's helping me do things that I've always wanted to do. And I don't feel as insecure about doing it, because I can lean on y'all. I can call Diana and I'm like, well, let me get back to you on that. And call you, Carolyn, and say, oh, well, no, let's just stay here. Let's not go there yet. But the community, the space that we are creating, I am so grateful for it. And I'm grateful for what you both bring. And I am looking forward to Friday. So thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much.
Yes, indeed. So, ladies and gentlemen, it's time to release the conversation. I want you to know that I love you, I bless you, I appreciate you, and I thank God for you. I invite you to say yes to life. So, continue to be your very best self. And I love what Carolyn said. The time is now. It is time. Take care of yourself. We are going to release the show with John Stringer, which you won't hear a lot of it, but you'll hear it if you listen to the audio. No, that's not John Stringer. That's India. We don't have permission to do that. Anyway, thank you for being here. Once again, I love you. I bless you. I appreciate you, and I thank God for you. Peace and blessings.
There is a place in this world with open arms right now. Welcome to love, welcome to peace, welcome to our community.